All right, hi Vuejs Amsterdam, and thanks for having me. And let's start with a little story, shall we? Okay, so it all started about a few years ago. I was working with agencies and making a ton of websites for clients. My stack of choice was simple. It was Nuxt websites hosted on Netlify, paired with whatever CMS the client was fine with. And it worked great. However, as I was making more websites, I found myself repeating some snippets of code again and again. This felt wrong. That's when I started exploring making my own packages. And I did make some utils for Nuxt and some utils for Netlify. And do you know, well, those worked great for me. I was able to cherry pick them on a need basis. And I stopped copy-pasting the same snippets of code from project to project. And do you know who faced a similar story around the same period? Well, the Nuxt team did. All of a sudden, they started to make packages that weren't Nuxt. At first as part of the Nuxt contrib GitHub organization, and now under the refined AnJS organization, which Puya talked a bit about earlier today. But, well, basically, both the Nuxt team and I were minding our own businesses, but at one point, we started to make packages. And trust me, you can also make packages too, at your company or for personal project. So let's talk about packages. We'll talk about package ecosystems and why you'd like to have your own. We'll also deep dive into NPM packages and their intricacies. And finally, we'll discuss package maintenance tips and what does that look like in a company or like for an open source offer. So let's get started, shall we? OK, but before that, I'm Lucie Haberer. I'm from France, as you probably guessed from my accent. I started my development journey working with MediaWiki, the software Wikipedia runs on. I've worked at a bank. No need to share more about that for now, but we'll get back to it. Nowadays, I'm working at Prismic as a developer experience engineer, hence today's T-shirt. I'm having fun there managing the company's open source ecosystem, so you start to see the link with this talk. Finally, I'm a Nuxt team member. I've been working with Nuxt for almost 5 years now. And, well, I just love to work with Nuxt. But anyway, enough me chatting. Let's get into it. And let's get to the talk. And one of the things I want to try with this talk is to make it a bit interactive, because that's a nice way to end the day. But just a bit, don't worry. So I built this app that works a bit like Kahoot. It allows me to prompt you about something, except there's no funny music, and you don't get more points for being fast. But anyway, the first question I'd like to ask you is, have you ever published a package, an NPM package, or any other kind of non-NPM packages? So please, grab your cell phone and scan one of those QR codes with your answer. Alternatively, you can follow one of those links. Let me do it myself. All right, so, well, thank you all for taking the time to scan those QR codes. That's really interesting. So as you can see, we have about the same number, roughly the same amount of people that did and never did publish a package. So that's great. So let's not get into it. And actually, the first thing I want to talk about today is not even packages themselves, but package ecosystems. And the reason for that is that when talking about packages, in fact, we're more often talking about ecosystem of packages. And I think this concept is a better way to think about making packages as an organization or an individual. So let's talk about package ecosystem first. So, well, what is a package ecosystem? If I were to give a definition of package ecosystem, it will be something along those lines. A package ecosystem is all the packages under the responsibility of an entity, whether it's an individual or a company. To put this in perspective, for example, at Prismic, we're building a headless CMS. And for our client to use it, we provide many SDKs to integrate with their framework. So you have SDKs for Node, for Vue, Nuxt, React, etc., etc. And as per our definition, this is Prismic's package ecosystem. But then, what about me, Lucie? Well, as we've seen, I'm making some packages for myself. I'm also making Nuxt2, a cool CLI for Nuxt, Active, file generator, and a few other packages. And, well, that's Lucie's package ecosystem. But OK, I think you got the hang of it. That's my definition of a package ecosystem. But let's add some more to that. The first thing is that ecosystems can be private. Remember, I worked at a bank. And, well, bankers are about security and everything, so we have like internal private packages within the bank, so that's a possibility. Second thing is that ecosystems can be just with one package. That's very valid. And the reason for that is like, well, like, how could you get started otherwise? Indeed. While we tend to think that an ecosystem has to have multiple things in it, it can be only one. And overall, that's why I think considering packages as an ecosystem really helps, because you're not making an exception by creating a package for your code. Instead, you're just growing an ecosystem that will then support you better in your journey. So, well, that's how we can define a package ecosystem. It's all the packages under the responsibility of an entity. They can be private or public, and, well, they can grow or shrink, contain as many packages as needed inside them. So, well, OK, Lucie, you came up with a weird way to talk about multiple packages, but why would I want to make my own ecosystem? Well, I'm glad you asked. So, well, why not everyone is into creating like big packages like Vue or React? For us, mere mortals, there are still reasons to create packages. And, well, maybe like the most obvious reason to create packages is for the sake of abstracting things. So, to give an example about that, getting back to Prismic, at Prismic we have an API. And for our client to use this API, we provide them with a client that abstracts all the code necessary to query our API. And, well, this works for other company. Again, remember, I worked at a bank. And there we had an internal authentication service. And in order to authenticate the same way through all our application in my team, we created an auth package that was able to authenticate the same way for our service. Finally, one last example, getting back to Prismic, but from a different angle. My job at Prismic is to maintain the SDK of the company. And to build this SDK, we use Vite. And, well, this requires a lot of configuration, and I have a lot of SDK to maintain. So I was copy-pasting the configuration from package to package, but, well, this felt wrong. So instead, I created a Vite plugin that abstracts all the configuration I need to bundle my SDKs. I published it to NPM, and now I just need like 3 lines of configuration, and I'm sure all my packages are getting built the same way. Neat, huh? And, well, this pattern of abstracting like configuration is actually not that absurd to do. The next team, for example, like started to embrace this pattern with a new extends key in its configuration that allows you to do just that. So, well, that's what abstraction is about. You can like abstract small libraries, helpers, or even configuration. But I can already see some of you rolling your eyes in the room about that, so I want to put this clear disclaimer: don't abstract prematurely. Abstraction never comes for free, neither does creating packages. So, well, we talked about abstracting things to create packages. There are other reasons to do so. For example, forking an existing package, creating a new technology, etc., etc. Those are more relatable, though, so I won't dive into them. But basically, at the end of the day, the reason we're building packages is to make our developer experience nicer and our software stronger. Every day, we use Vue, React, because they make building maintainable interfaces a breeze. But we certainly don't need any of those for our UIs to be reactive. However, they make the journey to get there much nicer. And in that regard, those are big libraries. But small libraries also make a difference. Like, they are easier to start with than before. They can be more easily made at any company. And, well, they are small. They have a smaller scope than a big code base. And because of that, it's a great opportunity for us to battle test those APIs so that when we use those small packages, we're sure we're building bigger application on top of trusty foundation. So, well, now we know more about like packages. Maybe this already inspired you to create some. However, if you don't feel like creating packages yet, that's fine. Like many things, it's just nice to know about this pattern, because the day when you need it, like you will be aware of it and you will be able to use it. In the meantime, whether or not you already feel like creating packages, knowing more about packages and their internal will at least help you troubleshoot better issues related to packages. So let's talk about packages and how they work. OK, so I believe what we've seen so far works for any technologies. whether it's PHP packages, Dino modules, Rust crate, etc., etc. However, if there's one tech we can all relate to today, it's NPM packages. So let's talk about NPM packages and their entry cases. But before we get started, just need to voice some quick disclaimer. Well, I lost my screen. And is it back? I don't know. Oh, OK, that's Windows failing me. All right. All right, so some quick disclaimers quickly. This won't be about which bundler to use or which linter to use. Bjorn already talked about that this morning about it. And well, if you want to talk more about it, feel free to come chat with me during breaks about those. Also, well, some of you might be rolling their eyes. Is she really about to talk on how to write a package JSON? Yes, I am, but no worries. I'm sure there'll be some things for you to pick up, or at least there'll be some jokes. All right, so the first thing I want to talk about is actually not even package JSON, but NPM, because they just start with the basics. So NPM, it's two things. First thing is the NPM CLI. It allows you to interact with your packages. I'm sure like most of you are already familiar with the NPM install command. I won't talk more about that. But one interesting thing about NPM is that it can be replaced with other CLI. For example, like you have yarn, pnpm, and so on. And well, TLDRs, they all claim to do something better than NPM. And that's pretty much true as of today. So second thing that NPM is an online database. So that means it's a registry where you can publish package to and when you can download package from. And the default registry is npmjs.com. But there are other registries out there. GitHub has a public registry, for example, or you can even spin your own. And an interesting thing about those registries is that you can configure NPM to use multiple registries to resolve your dependencies. And that's a pattern I'm sure some of you are already using in this room, or at least we were when I worked at the bank. So, well, that's what NPM is about. You don't like its CLI, you can change it. You don't want to be on the public registry, you can use another. Well, one last thing about NPM, like the company behind NPM is owned by GitHub, which itself is owned by Microsoft, like pretty much everything else at this point. So now that we know about NPM, we can talk about the package JSON. Well, it's our package definition. When we create websites, Next websites, for example, we use it mainly to declare our dependencies and our scripts to work with our project. However, when we create a package, there's a lot more considerations that come into play when creating a package JSON. So let's talk about that. The first thing, like there's two fields that are mandatory. Those are quite simple. It's the name field, the name of our package. There are some restrictions as to how it could be written, but basically anything kebab case will be fine. And well, one interesting thing about fields that not everyone knows is that they can be scoped. So a scope, it looks like this. And a scope represents an organization or a user. And the interesting thing about scopes is that you can only publish packages to scopes you have access to. So for example, this is Prismic scope, and in this room, I'm the only ones that can publish to this scope. Finally, like scope, well, I find it interesting because they give you a hint at a glance as to who is behind the package. So this helps you determine like what is a first-party library, what is like a third-party library. Second mandatory field is a version field. It's a version of our package. And here I have a question for you. So again, please grab your smartphone, and I want to ask you, can you use 2.3 as a version number? So again, please vote by following one of those URL. And I hope it will work. Yeah, it should. All right. All right, well, let's wait some more. But OK, so well, we have about like 2/3 in one way and like 1/3 the other way. That's interesting. Actually, well, if you're wondering, you cannot use 2.3 as a version number. If you try to do that, NPM will crash. And the reason for that is that NPM wants your version number to be a valid same-var number. So same-var stands for semantic versioning. It's a versioning convention that reflects the different kind of changes that happen between two versions. And well, it's a really interesting topic, but I don't have time to lean more into it right now. So if you're curious about it, like head over to samevar.org. For now, let's move on. So we've seen like the basics and like boring but mandatory fields. Let's now see more package-oriented field. And if a package is about delivering code, then we have to talk about entry points. What our package is like making available to our users. So in that regard, the most basic entry point is the main field in the package. This is the code that you can require inside your application. But you might have heard about the two flavors of JavaScript, CommonJS and ECMAScript module. In that regard, the community came up with an additional field, the module field, that allows you to declare your ECMAScript module entry point. So we have main and module, but things had to be a bit more complicated, of course. A few years ago, the folks at NPM decided that, among other things, it would be nice to have an official way to have both like CommonJS and ECMAScript module as entry points. So they came up with the exports field. Exports field is a map that allows you to declare multiple entry points, and for each of them, you can specify a CommonJS and an ECMAScript module entry point. All right, so we have main, module, exports. Which one are we supposed to use? Well, the answer to that is not trivial, but basically you have two choices. Either you want to be future-facing and only future-facing, then you can just use exports. Or you want to or have to be backward compatible, then you have to use all three. So that's for entry points delivering code to our application. But, well, there might be other kind of assets that you want to provide to your users. Famously, you might want to provide TypeScript types if you're working with TypeScript. To do so, the types field in your package.json allow you to declare a TypeScript type definition file to type your library. Also, some packages are CLI. To declare a CLI for an NPM package, you have to use the bin object like this, and this allows you to say, like, well, like this script, please install it as a CLI that will be available under my package as a name. Finally, you might work with other kind of assets. Maybe you're shipping images, like object, or like style sheet, for example. Then all those assets, you can declare them through the files array, like this. Whew. So that was a pretty nice section on entry points. They are the most complicated things you can configure on an NPM package. And, well, if you want an example, here's how we ship our packages with at Prismic, with everything like configured, as we talked about. Another thing I want to talk about are the dependencies. So you're already familiar with dependencies and dev dependencies. Those behave rather similarly when working on a website, for example, like a Next website. However, the difference is radical in the context of a package, because when you install the package, only dependencies listed under dependencies will get downloaded, and anything under dev dependencies is just ignored. That is important because, well, if you're building your package with Vite, for example, like we do at Prismic, you have to declare Vite as a dev dependencies because you don't want all your users to install Vite because your package is already built for them. So, and finally, a third type of dependency that exists, there are others, but this one is pretty interesting, are peer dependencies. So peer dependencies gives NPM a hint that your library is meant to work with this dependency. It's not necessarily like importing them or whatever, but it's just like, well, hey, like I need this to work, I'm supposed to work with that. So those are what peer dependencies are for. And for example, Vue router declares Vue as a peer dependency like this, because, well, like there's no real point in using Vue router without Vue. So, well, those are the main things to consider when it comes to writing a package.json. You have what you need to get started. However, well, I had to omit things. I haven't talked about the engine field. I haven't talked about the type without an S and many other fields. But no worries, like you're not missing out that much. Those are more specific, and you don't need to use them every time. And, well, if you want to learn more about them, there's always the documentation, of course. OK, so we talked about package ecosystems. We also talked about like deep dive into NPM packages and their intricacies. But, well, trust me, the most complicated things to talk about, like to do when you create a package is maintaining it. And I have about 5 minutes left to talk to you about that, so let's do it. But before that, one last quick poll. I'd like to ask you, have you ever opened an issue or feature request on an open source project? So one last time, please grab your smartphone and submit your answer through the form, and just know. OK. Well, thank you so much, by the way, for taking the time to that. That's really cool. I'm really happy to see that these things work and like the Wi-Fi is reliable. So, OK, well, we have a great amount of people that created issues and feature requests. Thank you so much for contributing, really. And well, no shame for people that never did. Like, I'm sure one day you'll have the opportunity to do so. So, well, you created a package, you published it, like you open sourced it, so that now makes you an open source author. But, well, really, you have to note that, like, as an open source author, people really expect a lot from you, like, really. Sometimes in a rude way, sometimes in, like, a really pleasing way. But bear in mind that, really, it's fine if you don't support TypeScript from the get-go. It's fine if you don't have both CGS and ESM. It's fine if you don't have something else, CS docs, and so on and so on. But because you're now an open source package author, you now have this mighty power of replying to those people asking for more from you, that a PR is welcome. Because trust me, if the package already works great for you and for others, it's already great. And talking about open source, one thing that works really great is to grow up your skill and to just make your packages better and to learn a lot of things, is to inspire from other open source projects that you like or that you find working well and stuff like that. And I learned a lot about things this way, because overall, if things work great for others, they might work great for you too. For example, when I joined Prismic, one of the first things I did was to shamelessly steal Nuxt bug report pattern, because I liked it and found it efficient, and I wanted to use it on my own packages that I will be responsible of. And overall, I learned a lot about open source this way. You can do crazy things with a GitHub folder. There are really cool tools to automate your publication process, like standard version CLI. Or you can even, there's cool extension on VS Code, like VS Code version names, which I really like to update dependencies on my packages. And talking about updating dependencies, let's now talk about regular maintenance. By regular maintenance, I mean two things. First of all, fixing any bug, if any got reported. And of course, maintaining dependencies. That is to say, updating them or replacing them is some you don't need them anymore. And this is really important to do regularly, as it will help ensure that your package is still fine to work with, it's still working correctly, and that you don't it's not a headache every time you need to add something, just maintained correctly. And to give you an idea, at Prismic, we do that about once a week if there are any issues that have been reported. Otherwise, it's more once a month, once every 2 months. And to let our user know at Prismic that we might not get back to them until the following week, because we want to stay focused, we let this quick bot reply on every issue that gets created, so that they know about it, our process, and we're not ghosting them or anything. We'll get back next week to you. And well, to chime back with the previous point, if you want to steal that from you because you think it will work great for you, feel free to steal it from us on GitHub. So, well, we talked about maintenance, but what about evolving our package? That is to say, adding new features or changing existing ones. Well, there's no rule for that really, but well, you can go along those ways. For small features, it's often fine to add them as is. You don't need to ask everyone about it. For bigger ones, it's often better to write plans to say to people well, I'm thinking about doing that, and maybe this will be great this way. It just allows everyone to contribute, to change ideas and stuff and so on. In that regard, what works really well for us at Prismic are RFCs. RFCs are technical documents that goes in great length to detail the consideration and everything. And well, they don't have a fixed structure, but if you want an example, you can go check out the one I wrote for Nuxt reading component at this link. But no worries, you'll get the slides at the end, so don't stress for that. Finally, a package can die. Well, maybe its functionalities are not native or not relevant anymore. Or maybe it has been replaced with something better, that happened a lot through the web history. Or finally, maybe no one wants to maintain it anymore. This one is a bit sad, but well, it happens. In any case, please be a great citizen and use the npm deprecate command so that everyone knows about it. So, well, that was my talk, maintaining your company's open source ecosystem. We discussed what's a package ecosystem for organizations and individuals. We went through npm packages and their intricacies, and we went also through some package maintenance tips. I really hope you managed to pick up a few things for you, or even get inspired. You can find all the info about this talk at lucie.red/Amsterdam. You can also follow me on Twitter, or chat with me on Twitter if you want to learn more or whatever. And I'm also available on Mastodon at lucie.red/Mastodon. So thank you all for listening. That was my talk.
Thank you so much, Lucie. That was very insightful.